Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Three Nails Information Security podcast. I am Vincent Mentz. I'm the founder of Three Nails InfoSec. We're a boutique cybersecurity firm focusing primarily on offensive security services. Today, we are joined by John Allen, who is the managing director at Morgan Franklin Cyber. Thank you for joining us, John.
Vincent, I'm super thrilled to be joining you today and look forward to our conversation. So thank you.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, I want to just start by maybe having you share a little bit about yourself and your background, let the audience know who you are. Would you mind giving us a bit of information about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. So again, John Allen with Morgan Franklin Cyber in the managing director position. So I've been in consulting for more than 30 years, Vincent. So I've seen a lot. I've done a lot. I've worked with small firms. I've worked with big four firms. And now I'm with Morgan Franklin Cyber. So started out doing IT work, traditional IT support. So, then that moved on into IT architecture, IT strategy, IT advisory, building out global networks for investment banks and some other enterprise clients. And naturally, the folks who were doing networking were sort of the early adopters of cybersecurity, right? We knew how to do firewalls. We knew how to do build rules for firewalls because we understood how routing works and how packets traveled, right? So we were sort of the natural ones to take on that edge and that perimeter security, right? So my cyber career sort of started in that vein, doing firewall work. And then we also took on doing directory services as my team built out the server infrastructure. And naturally, you have to layer in identity on top of that, which was, directory services. And that, again, just led to more opportunities within cyber. So starting at around 2015, certainly more focus in cyber, continued with my IT advisory and my networking background, certainly, but took on a much larger role within cyber and have been doing that pretty much for the past 10 years. And never forgetting my roots, Vincent, right? Starting with small firms, where I came from doing technology work. I bring that same mindset, whether again be an enterprise client or an SMB client, and as we help them with their cyber strategy. So always remember where you come from.
I love that. What a great piece of wisdom. I want to carry that through my entire career for sure.
I try to help my kids with that, and they're doing a good job with it. But it's not always so easy.
Yeah, fair enough. Why do you say that? I mean, with the
Um,
transition through your career,
yeah, I just think sometimes you're living in the moment, which is fine. It's always important to be present, of course, and be very intentional. But it's also important to know where you came from and how you got started. So I think that
yeah.
sometimes that wisdom comes with age. As you go through good times, difficult times,
Yeah.
you have a little bit of a perspective, right? And as you get older, you get this perspective. And frankly, Vincent, it's one of the things that our clients and my clients and Morgan Franklin's clients pay us for, frankly,
Mm,
is our perspective, right?
mm,
We've seen a lot of things. We've worked with a lot of different clients across all different industries, sectors, all
mm,
different size clients,
mm-hmm,
right? So, and we know what good looks like. So
mm.
they value that perspective.
I love that.
So, yeah.
Well, speaking of perspective, offline we had sort of chatted about some of the things that
Hmm.
matter to you
Yeah.
and you think are going to matter in the future surrounding cybersecurity, which is the
Yeah.
basis of this podcast. And so I think, based on what you had said previously, you had mentioned that identity,
Yeah.
and I sort of told you that I had recently spoken with somebody from the FBI, and they had
Hmm.
also said, identity truly is going to be how we
Yeah.
secure our future. And so, how do you feel like identity is going to strengthen the SMB in the
Yeah.
future?
That's a great question, right? So let's take a step back and we look at the enterprise first, right? We know in the enterprise that identity is at the core, is central to cybersecurity programs. Human identities, machine identities, non-human identities, OT identities, right? That is the core as we look at zero trust principles, right, to secure that environment in the data, right? Typically, everything started at the edge, right? Protecting the edge, but as things move inside, and we try to look at not just north-south protection, but horizontal, identity is at the core of that. Those same principles fit in the SMB space. Yeah, the tooling might not be the same. The skill level at the client might not be the same, but the principles remain. You have to protect your crown jewels and your data, right? And the way to do that is with identity and very strict controls on who or what has access to what services, what devices, what data. Now, in the SMB space, a lot of times that sort of just is outsourced to a third party, whether that be a managed services provider, somebody's friend or uncle or cousin, whatever the case may be. So it's important for the business owner, business leaders to really understand that and to buy in. Vincent, I met with a company last week, small company, but very successful. And there was a lot of trust between that person and their MSP. But they didn't know all of the questions to ask, and they just sort of took it for granted. So I was helping them sort of dive in a little further, right? And once we were able to peel layers of the onion back, the business owner in this case, who was very vested in what we were trying to accomplish, really understood the value of access, the value of protecting his data, the company's data, and protecting who has access to what they can see. Because before he really never thought about it, and now um, he's vested in it. He understands it. He's willing to put systems and processes and controls in place to protect it, because he knows without his crown jewels, and whatever they are, it's important. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, right? Crown jewels and how companies look at them, right? But he knows without protecting his crown jewels, he's out of business. So
Mm,
it was very refreshing to have that conversation, and sort of I could see the light bulb go off, right?
mm.
So he understands that identity, and I had to define that for him, what that meant, and how to look at it. But he
Can you def-
understands that.
yeah, can you define
Yeah.
that for us? I was going to say, can you demystify what exactly identity means here?
Well, identity is a few things, right? But it's who or what has access to systems and resources, right? In the old days, it just used to be humans, right? John.Allen, my ID, I have access to these file shares and this data, and I could get out to the internet. But now it's much different than that. It is really has grown. It's non-human identities, it's machines, it's service accounts, it's APIs, it's all kinds of things that the layman just takes for granted that things work, right? But behind the scenes, all of those things need access to do their job and to deliver the services that the end user ultimately needs. Okay. And again, this particular case and this user and this client really, again, I saw the light bulb go off, and he understood it, right? I was able to help him understand it. Now, luckily for them, the MSP did have things sort of in order, not 100%, but sort of in order, right? So he was in pretty good shape, but there are a lot of folks certainly in the SMB space that, yeah, they have a firewall and they think, oh, we're okay, we got a firewall, we're protected, or we use an outsourced provider for payroll or accounting software, whatever the case is, and it's their problem to protect it. But no, and as long as the end user or the clients control who has access, they're much better off. And it's one of the first lines of defense to protect, right? And protect their environment.
Okay. Anytime I talk to a client after conducting a pen test, almost
Yeah.
every single test, I sort of preach this message of principle of least privilege, and
Yeah.
I think that that really does tie to identity. Um, another sort of topic that we were throwing around was zero trust.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if there's any sort of correlations between how you're managing identity and zero trust, or some of the sort of technicalities behind either of those.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts surrounding zero trust as it relates to SMBs as well?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think again, if I go to the enterprise, right? I like to look at the enterprise and then work my way down, right? If you look at the enterprise, right, zero trust principles have been around for quite a while. Been very challenging to get implemented. Tooling, it's expensive. It's hard to gauge return on investment at that level. Very difficult, right? But again, in the SMB space, the principles remain, right? So if you have an MSP who deploys sort of zero trust principles, you're much better off. And then what that means is people should only have by default there should be no access, right? As opposed to
Right.
in the early days, it was wide open, and then you sort of
Mm-hmm.
pared it back.
Mm-hmm.
Zero trust, there should be no access by default, right? For anything, human identity, non-human machine, whatever it is, no access, right? And then through either manually or through tooling, right, you allow access dynamically to what it is that they need, right? And that allows protections because 9 times out of 10, in my analysis, when I look at a breach, malware, even ransomware, whatever the case is, it's usually a case that a human identity or non-human identity was compromised and had way too much access, right? So the principles of zero trust, if they were in place, right? Yes, okay, my ID might have been compromised, but that ID didn't really have access to anything,
Mm.
right? And
Okay.
especially if you can deploy things with zero trust principles dynamically, right? As soon as you do your thing, boom, and then that access gets removed, right? That's the best case scenario. In the SMB space, that's very difficult. Again, let's be honest, because from a tooling perspective, that's very difficult to and expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So least privileged is one step certainly above zero trust. Zero trust, no access, only as needed, right? Start by default is zero, right? And then as you go up, right, and try to make things as dynamic as possible, right? Because
Yep.
if things are just left with too much, you're bound to be exposed.
Okay. And companies, I mean, that's inevitable, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not
We're
if, it's when.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. With that in mind, describe what resiliency would look like for an SMB.
Yeah.
One thing you mentioned was, the financial hit companies will take when getting some of these top tier tooling. And so, resiliency can be, I think it looks different for enterprises and SMBs. Obviously, it does,
It
but
does. It does.
curious to hear some of your
Yeah.
contrasts there.
So what's interesting though now, it is different, right? There's certainly the pure scale from a resiliency in the enterprise versus SMB is different, right? We know that, right? In the enterprise space, it's quite vast, right? And there's a lot of tools and programs to allow that to happen in the enterprise. But what I have seen recently, Vincent, this is interesting development. A lot of the tools in the enterprise space for resiliency are making inroads in the SMB space because they're pricing things aggressively, right, to fit in because they realize that's sort of an untapped market. Okay, so there are tools that fit in the SMB space. Now, what does it mean to be resilient? It used to mean, okay, we have our servers and our databases are backed up to a tape or offsite tape. I'm aging myself, but are backed up somewhere offsite in the cloud to a third party, whatever the case may be. As long as we had that data, we could figure things out if we had an outage or something. But now, right, with the advent of ransomware and sort of cyber attacks, it's not enough just to have a backup, right? Because you don't know the quality of that backup. You don't know when that ransomware hit, right? You might be backing up the ransomware. So all of your offsite data might have, right? Might have the ransomware mixed in and it does you no good, right? So it's important, right, to have those simplistically, it's important to have those backups off-site where they are not reachable, right? They cannot be compromised, right? And you have to have them far enough back, right? Used to be people used to keep a month, right? We need to keep certainly more of that. We know that, right? And now there are tools in place again. There are tools that fit within the SMB space that can get it to granular level to understand the data. So say you're backing up your Oracle database and some unstructured data, whatever that is. There are tools out there that can sit inside the data and understand if that data has been compromised, right? And they can tell and protect it, right? And they can tell that version 6.5 from 2 weeks ago is clean, right? So
Yep.
if you were hit with ransomware, you can go back to that version and start over. Now, that's a lot easier said than done, right? I was talking to a different potential client here in New Jersey 2 weeks ago, before the holidays, and they were hit with ransomware. And it's been almost now a month, 2 months, month and a half, that they're still slowly getting back up and running. They've had to piecemeal things back, right? And a lot of those, so just it's a terrible situation, right? You live and learn through those, but a lot of companies, certainly in the SMB space, feel, well, all my data is in the cloud. It's in Azure, it's in AWS, or where it's in Oracle, wherever. And it's their job to protect me. It's not their job to protect you, right? And that's not, if you read the fine print of your contract, that's not what it says, right? The other thing is a lot of companies feel that, well, we're using third-party software that's cloud-based, so we're protected. Again, it's not the case, right? Again, we go back to access. If they're using, a payroll provider that's in the cloud, but they have identities that have too much access, if those identities get compromised, then the bad actors can jeopardize the information inside that payroll system, as an example, right? Now, does that payroll provider have backups, protections in place? Yes, but it's going to get ugly and it's going to get very painful, right? So resiliency in the SMB space, just to wrap that up, can mean a lot of different things. Ultimately, you have to have backups of your data. You have to be protected. You have to know what your crown jewels are and what is the business impact to me. If my crown jewels are affected, what's the business impact? So,
and everything is going to cost something.
yeah,
Security
of
is not
course.
free.
No, it's not free. And more and more folks are realizing now that security has to be factored in as a cost of doing business, Vincent. It's not a luxury. It's not a luxury. And that includes cyber insurance as well. It's not a luxury because it's a matter of when, not if, as we said earlier.
I was literally going to answer my next question, which was how can SMBs sort of view security as an investment rather than an expense? And really, it's not just an investment; it's a necessity, to survive.
Yeah. It's again, it's no different, right? The SMB space, enterprise, or even at home, it's no different, right? You have to invest in the mindset first, right? That this is important to the business, right? And let's make it a business enabler, not just a cost, right? Now you could say, oh, well, what does that mean? Great question. But if you look at the cost of, if I had an issue or I had an event or I had a cyber outage, right? And the business you lose, right? That's your return on investment. You can do that calculation very, very quickly. Okay. So it's important to first the mindset, and then to put some type of program in place to do that. And what that leads to, one, you can put your head on the pillow at night and feel a little better. It's not 100% guaranteed, but it will also put you in a better position from a cyber insurance perspective. Because one of the things in the SMB space is cyber insurance is very expensive, right? And not everybody has the sort of baseline in order to get it. It's much more difficult to procure a policy nowadays. And it's not just a rider on your business insurance, right? These are These are separate policies. So, and that will give you some type of financial protection in case you have a ransomware or you can't do business for a month for whatever the reason from a cyber outage. If you have that insurance, that that offers you some protection for your employees, for your customers, your third parties. So,
Sure. You mentioned it being sort of a mindset. How do
yeah.
you feel like employers can empower their employees to be the first line of defense?
Yeah,
Ultimately, that's
I love it, right? We talk a lot about training and awareness, right? And
yep.
I think it's imperative, right? We see it. You open up any newspaper or you're online. You hear a lot about cyber stuff, and I think there was even some stuff today, right? As we're taping this, there was some stuff today that the government has put forward from from a cyber policy perspective. Um, I think it's really about training and awareness, frankly, right? For everybody to be aware and have training on what's the proper etiquette for email, what to look for, right? How to spot phishing, right?
Yeah.
Um, to you have to have some tools in place, but people shouldn't be browsing to questionable websites, right? Those are sort of basic things
Yeah.
that go a long way to protect your business and your company, right? And I think as a business leader, it's imperative to sort of explain that mindset to the employees that are working for you and talk about it, right? And listen, I've had those conversations with clients as well. So I mean, the employees are on the front line, not only from the product perspective, but from a security perspective, right? It's important that they are aware and they have the proper training. And that it's not the Wild West. There's some bad people out there, right?
Yeah.
And they target all different types of companies, people, etc. There's a lot of companies who say, not me, not us. Why would they come? Why would they come after little old us? Well, they might just use you as a jumping off point to something else, or they might sit and lie in wait watching transactions, whether you're a title company or something, right? In the title, to that training and awareness, right? We're not going to be, if you're a title company, we're not putting in, bank details in an unsecure email, right? That's just a recipe for disaster. So there's a lot of things like that can be done to empower, embolden, and really educate the end user on how to be a good citizen.
You're really preaching my message for me here, John. So
Love
thanks.
it. Hey, it's not rocket science, but it's just basics that are so important, Vincent.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they should be viewed, as it's always best. One of my previous guests really highlighted the importance of keeping things fairly simplistic.
Yeah.
Really leaning into the things that truly matter, which you're hitting it on the head, I think, which is training and building a culture where employees are taking that information into their own personal lives, even.
You,
Um,
you, yeah, it doesn't, you leave the office, it's the same mindset when you're at home
exactly.
or if you're on your phone or your laptop or your iPad or whatever device that you're using, it's the
Mm-hmm.
same mindset.
Yep.
You have to be, my family sometimes gets tired of me sort of preaching that. But, I'm just trying to help them and use my experience and my perspective, as we said earlier,
Mm-hmm.
to sort of help them.
Because they're going to be the ones coming to you if they get scammed out of
Yeah,
$5,000. Like,
exactly.
it's
Exactly. You're
yeah.
absolutely right.
John, I really appreciate all the insights that you have to give us. If there's anything you'd like to leave people with, what would you say? Maybe based on this conversation or
Yeah.
anything we haven't spoken about. Is there any
Yeah,
sort of
the big thing that I like to talk about, certainly at the business level, is cyber is an enabler for the business, right?
Mm,
It can be accretive and additive to the business, right? It's not yes, it's a cost and it's a cost center, but it can really help you grow your business and enable your business and protect your business as you move forward and grow, right? That's sort of the mindset that I take, and I help my clients with. And once you do that pivot, all of a sudden it makes more sense and allows you to move forward and grow. So,
If people want to reach out to you, how can they contact you? What's the best form of contact for you?
yeah, I mean, email is great. John.allen@morganfranklin.com. I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay,
I'm on LinkedIn. You could search for me.
sure.
I'd love to collaborate and communicate with folks that need help.
Love that. And we're more of the offensive security space at Three Nails at Morgan Franklin Cyber. John, give us like a 30-second sort of ad in case people want to reach out to you guys.
Yeah, so we focus on mid-level and enterprise clients. We do a lot of identity work. We do governance, risk work, GRC work. We do infrastructure security. We do cloud security and strategy, and put together programs from a cyber perspective. So we're a full stop shop, and we can help really help with your most compelling and complex cyber challenges.
I love it. Well, thank you again so much, John, for joining today. I really appreciate your time and
Yeah.
wisdom. So,
Thank you,
and
Vincent. It's my pleasure. I appreciate it.
absolutely. Thanks, everybody.